it is shocking that this is happening within the women's sector in Scotland, and that there is a bullying of women who step out of line. That all rather came to a head this week as well. I don't know if you saw the film of a woman at the Zero Tolerance event. Zero Tolerance, again, funded by Scottish Government, and they were celebrating 30 years. 30 years ago, they did a campaign about violence against women. They had black and white pictures, they put up everywhere. There was a lot of support, and their campaign was really to encourage people to be bold, to bring this conversation about violence against women, domestic abuse, into the public spaces, to bring it onto the streets, to bring it into the workplace, to bring it into the centres of power, and to talk about what happened to women, and to be outspoken. And for their 30th anniversary, they had Nicola Sturgeon addressing the meeting, and they sent round an email beforehand saying that women were not allowed to ask about the definition of women or about single-sex spaces. So they had gone from being this really radical campaign to people who were just trying to appease some of the people in the room, as it turned out. And funnily enough, those people whose feelings they were very keen to appease were a couple of individuals who are trans-identified males, one of whom is the current CEO of Edinburgh Rape Crisis. And he was at the meeting. So having sent this email out, we also understood that they were stopping people on the door as they came in who they thought might cause trouble. The audience was largely handpicked. I suppose there are a lot of people within the sector who are aware who the people are who've got concerns. A couple of women said, well, we are going to ask something, and they were told to leave. Another couple of women got in. I know one of them is part of the Women's Declaration, and she was not the woman who stood up, but she did manage to speak to Sturgeon. And Sturgeon's response, which is Sturgeon's stock response, was that this has been introduced in many countries and there has never been any problems. Now, I know that you know none better that this is not true. But what has happened during committee stages is that any conversation about international examples have been dismissed as anecdotes. So the committee's report came out and said there were no concrete examples of harm from other countries. And while we and groups like Murray Blackburn Mackenzie have tried to stress that it is almost impossible to give official recorded data about harms caused by self-ID, when none of these countries are collecting that data officially, that has been ignored. You cannot prove something if people are not collecting the data. So this is Nicola Sturgeon's line, that nothing bad ever happens in other countries. And of course, this did so incense this other woman that she did stand up and shouted, "Shame on you, Sturgeon." And it is, it's an incredibly depressing film in a way, but in another way, Sturgeon did admit that most men would not take advantage of this, but some would. So this is only what most of us have been saying for the past 5 years and have been called bigots and TERFs. Sturgeon said exactly the same thing. Some people will take advantage of this. But she also, in effect, said that that was a price worth paying, that women's safety and dignity and the erosion of our human rights was a price worth paying for keeping some of these people who she claims are the most marginalised in society happy.